will defeat radical Islamic terrorism.
80% of young people didn't vote. Now, I think any objective observer, somebody who's not partisan on either.
This is my video that I am making to kind of recap my Iowa caucus experience. Iowa caucus, we had to take an entire semester course over the presidential campaign and as well as the caucus process in Iowa, since it is run a little bit differently than other caucuses and primaries around the country. So as we are coming down to February, we start meeting in our caucus groups and we break down into media and the research teams. And I was a part of the media team, and our professor, Dr. Iaquinto, briefed us, and she had a very high list of demands to be very informed, to do our homework, to think of questions to ask any person that we may come into contact with. For instance, international journalists, campaign staffers, the actual candidates themselves, voters, anyone we could possibly meet, to have 2 to 3 questions in mind in order to ask them. And we didn't want to disappoint her, to say the least. So for about 3 days, the stress level was just out the roof for all of us, since we didn't know which candidates we were covering, so we were expected to know everything about all of the candidates. So yes, I was very stressed because I take my journalism position on TMN very seriously, and I wanted to create good content because I had taken a class for this and I had conducted research for this. I have been waiting for this opportunity for so long, and to not do it right would serve an injustice to my team, my teachers, and to myself. So as soon as we get there in Iowa, we go to the media center in downtown Des Moines and we get our official press badges. And let me tell you, that in itself was an amazing feeling. We walk into the media center and we instantly see CNN, MSNBC, we see reporters doing stand-up live reports. There are people on the stage giving, well, I guess, broadcasting their coverage. And we walk and we see our own spot where there's a lamp and a seat and it says Truman State University. And that was the best feeling because we were there. We were running with the big dogs. And in a way, it encouraged us and inspired us to work really, really hard. So our first evening, we went to a Sanders and Clinton event. And my assignment that I was given was women's issues and how each of those candidates differed and what the caucus goers were saying. I hadn't previously researched deeply on women's issues for each of these candidates. In the van ride, I was cramming, which is a very common theme. Whenever I would go to a campaign, I would be in the van cramming on my phone to find out everything I could. I would search media outlets, I would look at their campaign platforms, I would look at social media. But it was very interesting, and it was very rewarding to know what I was talking about when I was talking to them, so that I could be very credible and I could get the information and the quality of information that I was looking for. Clinton and Sanders were very interesting because of the different types of people that were there, the people that were really ready for change, and then the people who, for Clinton, were just incredibly loyal. You could tell that they had been longtime supporters of her, and it was actually it was an amazing feeling because at the Clinton rally, I talked to a woman and she asked me if I was going to the journalism profession, and I told her that I hadn't really considered it, but it had been in the back of my mind, and she said she encouraged me to because I had an element of trust. And as a media person in politics, that is very hard to come by because we are kind of known as being sort of an enemy in that platform. So hearing that type of thing, and I also heard it from Republican candidates too, it was incredible. I am typically a strong liberal. So when I saw that I was going to a Cruz event who is naming himself as the most conservative candidate there, I was a little bit nervous. Not that I couldn't handle myself professionally, but that I couldn't portray in my writing without bias, because I knew that would be a big test for me. You got to really be in those tough spots as a media person, and you had to realize you have to kind of stand your ground. I had a campaigner tap me on the shoulder after a elevated piece in Cruz's speech and asked me, he tapped on my shoulder, "Did you write that down?" It's just interesting because I stood my ground and said, "No, I didn't write that down." We found it particularly difficult to be media representatives in the Republican campaign events because there was such a distrust for us. We received a lot of constrictions. For instance, they wanted to try to keep us behind white lines. They wanted to keep us in single file lines. And I was even denied to interview Steve King, the congressman from Iowa. As I was already talking to him, someone pulled him away from me and shoved him behind a curtain, so I wasn't able to talk to him. So just trying to establish that position was very challenging, but also I grew as a professional, trying to get to talk to those people who don't want to talk to you, and not getting discouraged by people trying to avoid you, but instead using that as a momentum to keep doing your job. And on Monday, we had a tip from an Iowa precinct captain that Hillary Clinton had a strategy with Martin O'Malley. Of course, this is all suspicion. We never actually proved it, but we did get some confirmation that there was discussion about it from a precinct captain, and also some of the caucus goers had heard of it too. So on Monday it was interesting because I put all my eggs in one basket, and I went out and I started talking to people, and I started to see if they were aware of the information. I started talking to precinct captains to see if they were aware of the information. And it's very hard to talk to precinct captains of the people who you think are involved in a strategy. It was actually really difficult because you didn't want to make people uncomfortable or offend them, but at the same time, it's important to know what's going on and what candidates are trying to do to outbeat the other ones, especially in the Iowa caucuses, because Hillary only won by 0.2 or 0.3%. So any strategy that she had was vital. Basically, the overall caucus experience was very busy, especially for the journalist, because each day we had a new assignment. And as soon as we hit the ground at the campaign rallies, we had to hit the ground and hit the ground running hard. And as soon as we got back in the van, we were transcribing interviews in order to prep ourselves for writing our stories later. And we would do it all over again for each event. And at night, we would write our stories and edit them at 2 a.m. and submit them to Copy Desk, which is located back here at the university. It was a lot of work, definitely. I don't know how many people can say as a 22-year-old college student that they can go to the Iowa caucuses and see Sanders, Clinton, Cruz, Christie, O'Malley, and Rand Paul in 3 days. I just don't know many people who've been able to say that and be able to talk to people about issues that matter, like women's issues. At Cruz, I covered tax reform and also why they found Cruz so attractive and what was their basis upon. With Christie, I talked about environmentalism and why he is a stronger candidate than the others. And for O'Malley, like I said, I covered the conspiracy between him and Hillary Clinton and their strategy to win the Iowa caucuses. So I got a really broad range, and I was tweeting and social media the entire time. So yeah, I did fall off the face of the earth for about 3 days, but I wouldn't trade it for the world.